So this is going to be a video dedicated to the wondrous work efforts of Vince McMahon. I got this idea from watching, I'm a big fan of Illuminaughtii and Blairs channel. We watch regularly and I love all the corporate casket videos. It's really good to learn about capitalism and its dodgy workings. Recently Blair made a video about the WWE and Vince McMahon, and I thought I'd jump on here and add my say because I've been a big fan of WWE for a few years now, and honestly the stories have just consistently saddened me, and there's not really much other way to say it. It just sucks. Some of my favourite wrestlers have been involved in very negative stories, which makes it hard because as trauma survivors you sort of want the communities that you're a part of and the fandom communities that you're a part of to remain safe. And as things are becoming more public and as people are speaking up a lot more and being called out a lot more and accountability is a lot higher, a lot of our favourite stuff's just getting ruined. And this is a story of that. This is a story of why I no longer watch WWE. I mean, you watch it if you want, but it's just why I stopped. It wouldn't be talking about WWE's controversies and deaths if we didn't mention Chris Benoit. Blair did a really good job at covering most of this information in her video and does a very good job of covering the topic of acquired brain injuries and the effect it can have on mental health and physical health, so I won't touch on Chris Benoit too much. It's a tragic story. If you need to look it up, I'd suggest go watch Blair's video on it. But big trigger warning there. It's a hard story to hear. Why do I always run out of breath? Another death in WWE that shook the fandom was the death of Owen Hart. Owen Hart died in ring. And there's argument as to who is to blame for this happening, and there's argument whether they did the right thing afterwards. Owen Hart, as the Blue Blazer, had like a superhero gimmick. And Vince Russo thought that his character was quite boring, and to jazz it up a bit they would put in a segment where he enters as the Blue Blazer superhero and sort of rappels in on a harness. Pretty cool. The team had done it with Sting before, so it wasn't like a brand new stunt that no one had attempted, so that was sort of the plan. Upon practicing this and first trying it, they found that the harness that they used didn't undo fast enough, and so the whole stunt seemed kind of boring and a bit slow. So Russo suggested they try it with, I believe, what is called a nautical clip, which is designed for a quick release. Russo approached Hart with the suggestion of this nautical clip. Now, Hart was not at all comfortable with this, and has been reported to have said to Russo and to others that he didn't really want to do this stunt. A fair few of the stunt coordinators that were asked to set up the nautical clip straight up refused and were quoted saying that it would be crazy to attempt such a thing. Nonetheless, the show went on and Owen Hart was rappelled 5 feet in the air above the ring with a clip that was not designed to repel a wrestler in the ring, and the clip came undone and he fell. It's just sad. So his co-workers were there, like his family was there. The Harts are a big wrestling family, and interestingly, Vince McMahon made the decision that the show would continue on after Owen had been taken away, which has caused quite a controversy. Owen Hart's own wife said that she highly doubts that he'd want the show to go on. The Rock said that he thought that Owen would want the show to go on. The Rock's also recently come out in support of Joe Rogan, so I don't know. Owen Hart's brother said that he doubts he'd want the show to go on. I think it's horrible to make his co-workers and friends continue to work after just losing someone. I couldn't imagine making people do it, but that's what they decided to do. I did write a script, not that I'm going off it. There are even quotes sort of not blaming Vince Russo for Owen Hart's death, but definitely indicating that Owen was hesitant and that Russo was really encouraging and pushed him into it. Quote from Jim Cornette. He says, Vince Russo didn't feel that Owen was exciting enough as himself and wanted to make him a superhero, so he came up with the idea of doing exactly that. Owen wasn't comfortable with it, but he had already turned down a few things that he wasn't comfortable with, and he didn't want to be a negative Nancy or be known as the guy who kept saying no, so he went along with it, and that didn't turn out well. I think that's quite indicative of the the pressure that would have been on Owen to take part in this stunt that was essentially advised against by everyone. And I think responsibility should be taken if someone felt pressured and that they didn't have a choice in a certain stunt. There are even stories after Owen had been taken out of the ring of other wrestlers being pushed out of the curtain, being like, go, 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 you're on. Imagine. Not one of the first incidences of Vince's apparent heartlessness, but it was definitely a big one. And it was one that I think needs to be spoken about because there are a few wrongs done on many different levels, from ignoring safety to continuing on quite disrespectfully and forcing your workers to do something honestly just near impossible in such an emotional state. Now, it would be wrestling if we didn't talk about there's a big culture of misogyny in the WWE, and it's spread to our current wrestlers, having many accusations in many cases brought up against them now, because it seems like this has encouraged a sort of environment where you say something and you don't say something. One of the biggest examples, I think, from past was Fabulous Moolah, who, after her death, many victims came forward and it turned out that she had been involved in human trafficking. Pretty heavy stuff. Would you put this person in the Hall of Fame? I'd say no. You can make your own decisions. Regardless of this, WWE decided that they would try to name one of the women's matches after Fabulous Moolah at the Andre the Giant Memorial. It probably goes without saying that that wasn't the best idea. A lot of people boycotted. They ended up changing the name, but I think that's another little example of how WWE tends to treat their victims that have come forward and people who very clearly done wrong. Jerry the King Lawler is one who was given a platform after accusations and who I think played quite an active role in developing this misogynistic culture at WWE. He was charged with rape and was quoted essentially claiming that anyone who has ever flirted is soon to be accused, which almost is just like a little summary. That was Billy grumbling. That's a pretty good example of like the way the culture is and the way everything's treated. I mean, things are really just swept under the rug. Well, I had a full article written and prepared about Lola, but it appears to not have gone through on my email. So, we're going to move on. Honestly, it's not all that important. The victims are what matter here. Calling out this culture is what matters here, and not standing for it anymore is what matters here. So there's actually been like quite a few cases where accusations have come out about people in the WWE and they've been allowed to continue on working. Velveteen Dream is one of the biggest ones that jumped to mind, and he continued working actively while there was a lot of people saying a lot of things online. I said it before, but trauma survivors deserve to enjoy their fandoms too. So these people that have done wrong and refuse to take accountability, and these people that actively have hurt people, shouldn't be paraded in these fandoms, whether it's pro wrestling or games or whatever. They shouldn't be viewed as heroes. They should be viewed as the disgusting people that they are. And lots of my favourite wrestlers have many accusations against them, that the different treatment between men and women at the WWE. One of my prime examples of that was all the WWE porn leaks that happened. A few of them did porn and stuff like that, and power to them. That does not give anyone the right to leak any nudes of anyone, even of the porn stars themselves. Like, if someone's creating pornography content to sell, you still don't have the right to leak that nude. But if someone has something privately, you don't hack it and take it and put it on the internet, because that's a shit thing to do. Regardless, that's what happened a fair few times with a fair few different female wrestlers, and most of the time the crowd reaction and the public reaction is just to laugh at them. Do with that what you will. I think it's pretty gross. Actually, an example of this spreading through wrestling culture everywhere, we went to see PCW the other day. I live in Melbourne, and PCW is just one of the local pro wrestling places. It's usually kids and families, and the crowds are great. There was this one bloke up the back that just could not stop yelling the most misogynistic stuff you'd ever heard. And my partner was sitting next to me getting progressively more and more angry. And we almost ended up leaving because this man just couldn't stop yelling at any female that came into the ring saying, "Make me a sandwich. go back to the kitchen. Any stereotypical, overused, really boring sexist joke that you could think of he had. It was like he got a fucking dumb sexist jokes book and was just recycling them. The woman that he was yelling at's like 19. And there's like a 40 to 50-year-old man telling her to get in the kitchen. The people who disagree with that sort of behaviour, are they supposed to just go and sit quietly, or do you say something? And if you say something to these people, what can you say without causing some sort of violent reaction? I swear half of these fans don't realise that the wrestlers actually aim to keep each other safe and aren't actually assholes to each other. And I think that's part of that culture that's been encouraged. Of course, this isn't to say that this only occurs in professional wrestling, but there are a few shining examples of sports companies handling these situations better than the WWE have. For instance, there was a soccer player recently who is being investigated, and he has immediately been removed from games. There's no ifs, ands or buts. That's how you deal with it. I don't know why Vince McMahon is so adamantly against this. I'd say the sexist culture at his company probably reflects some of his personal beliefs, and you'd hope with some of the wrestlers that are there now that do seem like better people, this will change. But even seeing new storylines like on AEW, they've got one, the black women against the white women, and it seems like they're setting it up for the black women to be the heels just because they're black. I thought we'd grown past this. We haven't. I know this was a WWE video, but it wouldn't be bitching about pro wrestling if I didn't mention AEW. I'm currently devastated about the Darby Allin accusations. He was previously someone that I really enjoyed watching wrestle, and even seeing his t-shirt advertisements come up on the bottom of AEW screens now makes me feel sick. I don't know, heaps of people are like, look, just ignore it, or like it doesn't affect their wrestling, or, you know, benefit of the doubt. But you have to listen to victims, otherwise victims die. You should listen to the victims and give them at least the safety of not having to see that face pop up on television, and not having to see that person be cheered by a crowd who probably don't even know what is actually going on, and if they do, they probably don't know the full story. Sammy Guevara is another one who, he's had quite his controversy. I think he handled it quite well, and the AEW actually handled this quite well. I think this should have been set as an example for the future, but it doesn't seem to have spread to every person that's been accused at AEW. But he had said that he would RAPE Sasha Banks. This came out, and he was ordered to do ethics classes and sat down with Sasha Banks and discussed it, and it seems like he may have genuinely learned something from it, and it could potentially have led to Sammy growing as a person from it. Also did want to clarify one thing. When mentioning Jordan Devlin on Illuminaughtie's video, a picture of Finn Balor came up. I just wanted to specify Finn Balor is not Devlin, and from what I can research, there's no accusations against Finn Balor. I had to jump on and research that instantly because Finn is one of my favourite wrestlers. I've met him, he seemed gorgeous. I'm a person with anxiety. He sensed my anxiety and gave me a big hug, and it scared me to see his photo come up on that screen with the people that had been accused of such horrible stuff. So I just wanted to say one of those photos was of Finn, and from everything I can find, there's no accusations against Finn, and from my personal experience, Finn Balor is just a sweetheart. That's one person, if you don't want to watch the shows because it's so full of misogynistic bullshit and you just want to take solace in a sexy wrestler, Finn Balor's probably the guy. He's got abs of steel. He's Irish, he's beautiful, and he's just really friendly. Another wrestler that I really stand that genuinely seems really, really kind is Sonny Kiss. I also want to mention WWE, when one of the wrestlers that they don't seem to like as much was accused of a similar situation. They ripped his face off the side of the tour bus instantly, and he was removed from the company instantly. So I feel like Vince will, by all means, use these accusations as a reason to get rid of wrestlers that he was already getting tired of or already didn't see working with his plans for creative at WWE. But the ones that fit in and are a good part of creative seem to get away with anything. What's in summary of this? I don't even know. Boycott WWE. What is my conclusion to this? We need to work better so that trauma survivors can enjoy things too. We need to work better so that people are held accountable properly. We need to ditch the idea of cancel culture. What is cancelling? They lose a few sponsors on YouTube and then jump back on Twitch 6 weeks later? Like, it doesn't really seem to be a big thing, so I don't want to hear any of that shit. We barely even got into the treatment of the wrestlers who might want their release or who get injured, but there's just more than multiple. There's just case after case of people coming forward saying that they've been mistreated by the WWE. And this company seems to get away with it and seems to hold on to their wrestlers because they're still the biggest, which I think as consumers, that's our job to change. So I'm going to finish this video off by saying free Ali. Bang.